We are going to kick off this, what I always call fast, fun, and furious session because we do have a lot to cover. I honestly hope that you have had the best start to the new year. And I truly believe that 2025 is not just going to be big or ginormous, it's going to be a completely game changer in what we're going to see from a careers perspective, from a business perspective, and from a skill set perspective. And this is exactly what this training is all about. So before we get into it, I'm always curious where people are joining from. So if you're watching the replay, great to have you here. Make sure you also send me a message on LinkedIn or Instagram because this is where we can jam afterwards. So this is a good opportunity for us. I would say I'll get into the training so we can cover as much as I possibly can in this 1 hour that we have together, but also feel free to drop in any questions, any comments in the Q&A box because the chat doesn't always work with webinars. You are in your own private space. You can't see anyone, which is designed on purpose because I want you to be proactive. I want you to start writing down what you can take away from the session because in the end, information is great, but if you don't put it into action, it's simply becoming a library and we don't want that. So this training is all about the 2025 trends that you cannot ignore, especially if you are in an entrepreneurial role and or an executive who is looking after the business development and the growth of the business. In the end, it's all about driving growth through influence, impact, and of course, also through your network and your presence. And this is exactly what I'm going to cover in this training the next hour or so. But again, before we started, I'm always curious, how did you come across me and this training? I'm honestly so excited you are here because that means that you are invested in personal and professional growth and development. Maybe you have come across me via the podcast. We've got 172 episodes now out there and we are still going strong. Maybe we've come across at one of the events that I was speaking at, maybe a recommendation from somebody who's already worked with me, or you've even read the book. Honestly, amazing work. If not, there's still the opportunity for you to do that and or for you to also get started with assessing where your authority score is with the free assessment that you can get over at impact with triplec.com/quiz. I'll say it again, impact with triplec.com/quiz. Say that five times fast. That is like a tongue breaker. Now, I also know that for many working with me and applying the trusted authority framework on themselves, on their business, or even their team and their organization has been on the vision board for quite some time. I will share in this training how we can actually work together in 2025 because as many, I've also evolved and also responded to what the market actually needs. So there is plenty of time for you to learn more about their programs at the end. But in the meantime, if you say, I want to have a chat how we can actually implement that in a more tailored solution for my team, we have brand new opportunities for also companies to tap into the trusted authority framework. You can book a call with me on the call.impact, again with the triplec.com. And I'm honestly excited to talk to you how we can actually make this work for you, your business, and or your team. Okay, now, as I said in the beginning, I honestly truly believe that 2025 is going to be a complete game changer for a couple of reasons. If you look back for a second, 2020 was a year of massive changes and disruption. And we don't need to explain why. We all know that, COVID certainly has disrupted the way how we work and how we led. And that was a remote first approach for many of us. Over the last few years, we have adopted to that. But then last year in 2024, it was quite a challenging year for most businesses and professionals across the board, really. And it was all about economic uncertainty. We had the election. We saw the rise of AI and obviously also digital disruption in pretty much every industry and profession. Now, do I believe that it's going away? No. I do believe, however, that it will increase even further, which is why I truly believe that 2025 is going to be a bit of a game changer year because it's all about mastering influence in this tech-driven and AI-first world. We're not going backwards anymore. Technology has always outpaced us. But the good thing is that there is an opportunity for us to embrace that and actually adopt to what's required in this next world of work that we are heading into. With that said, Heads on heart, I truly believe that in 2025, trust is going to be your competitive advantage. Even according to research, to Deloitte research, 94% of leaders agree that trust is critical, but, and this is a shocking statistic, but only 39% have an extra strategy in place to not only build trust, but also maintain trust. And I always want to preface in this digital first world, because how we build trust, how we make decisions is completely changing, and hardly any of the organizations, small or big, have anything in place to respond to that. On the other hand, we also see that skepticism is at an all-time high. Should not come as a surprise. The world is flooded with information, including misinformation. Teams and clients are more skeptical than ever before because clearly they have been burned once or many times before. Plus, and this is a big change that we are going to see, decision making is evolving with this digital first strategy and also with a different decision maker landscape that I'm coming back to in a second. But on the flip side, that means that we have got an opportunity to turn trust in our ultimate competitive advantage. Because in the end, if you do have trust, you can fast track your influence, aka the buy-in for any project that you want to get across the line, for any new hire that you need budget for any new idea that you're introducing and you need the support of the wider organization. Speaking of organizations, high trust organizations also see 50% more productivity. And this is an important fact given this very competitive landscape that we are in, where it all comes down to being able to deliver in a quicker time, but also for less costs. Again, not a surprise, but 81% of consumers say that trust influences their purchasing decisions. And the last, but probably one of the most important advantages that I want you to focus on is that trust drives faster decision making. Now, 2024, and I'm sure you've experienced it in one or another way, but in 2024, people did not make a decision or it took forever. I've worked with clients who literally said in February 2024, we are ready to go. And now we are nearly a year later and still nothing happened. Not that they have chosen a different provider or a different partner, simply nothing happened. So at the same time, as much as we want to get things moving, trust is certainly an aspect where we can fast track the decision-making process. And that certainly helps when we not only want to grow our business, but of course also stay in business. So the question now is, okay, I get it. Trust is the ultimate currency in 2025, but how do you do it? Like, how do you build trust? And I want to add a couple of things. How do you build trust in this next normal? We're not going backwards anymore. So we have to adjust to what we are going to face, not only today, but tomorrow. We're seeing an increased pace of change, which means that thanks to technology, things are changing rapidly. What took a year, 5 years, or even 10 years to adopt is now done within weeks. That also means higher complexity, as if working with people is not complex enough. We also have to integrate now AI workforce and agents into our teams. That requires a different skill set. Institutions, from governments to industry regulators, are requiring more transparency. The same with employees and partners. There's a lot more requests for higher admin, so that also increases the complexity. And the last change that I want to highlight, because we do have a lot to cover, but it paints the picture, is that we are seeing new organizational structures. What does that mean? Initially, it was all about a hierarchical setup, meaning you work your way up. You start at the bottom as a junior, and then you work your way up to eventually step into a C-suite role. Having said that, nowadays, over the last few years, organizations have less hierarchy because there is a lot more pressure from a commercial perspective, which means that simply working your way up to get the title, to then have the power, to then influence and make decisions doesn't necessarily work anymore. We see that the future of work is more project-based, and specialists from different areas, say from marketing, finance, IT, legal, they're all working together and usually in a similar level of seniority. So there's not one person who's got the say and the power, which means that to make things happen, we need to learn how to influence in this different landscape. And this brings me back to my question. How do we go about building trust? Well, I first researched this topic in 2020 when also the conversations shifted and changed. And my candidates and my clients came to me and said, I was made redundant, for example, and I don't actually want to go back to work anymore. I want to step into a consulting or a contracting role and I want to make things happen. But how do I go about that? How do I build trust and influence even when I don't have the title? At the same time, a lot of leaders reached out and said, I can't see my team in person anymore. How can we establish trust when we don't see how we work together all the time? And how can we build a high-performing team when we don't necessarily have the water cooler conversations all the time? And this was what led me to researching what it actually takes to build trust and also authority and influence in this next world of work. And what I came up with was a framework that is based on working with over 400 professionals and doing a lot of research into the latest insights, what trust actually is built upon. And this is where the Trusted Authority framework was developed. In a nutshell, and I'll go through quite a few aspects of the nitty and gritty in this training, but it comes down to having three main core pillars to establish trust. It comes down to your capability, meaning, are you able to deliver what you promise? Does your brand promise meet performance? And this is the first part. We need to know what it actually is that you can deliver, that you want to be known for, what's your position, and then we can build upon that. The second component is credibility. Just because you are saying you're the best doesn't mean you are the best. And there are three ways how we actually build credibility. It's your own credibility. Basically, you've got the experience, you've got the credentials and so forth. On the go, you are documenting as you go. And this is especially as we're moving into new roles and new industries, and we don't have previous experience, more and more a method how we can actually establish credibility. And lastly, through others, meaning we can tap into an established network of trusted institutions, companies, even people to leverage off them. And of course, last but not least, but very important, visibility. I always say, if you can't be seen, you can't be considered. And so many professionals forget that, meaning they're working on developing their craft. They get better and better at their skills, but they conveniently forget that they also need to build their network and their presence to decision makers. Because in the end, when you're the best, but nobody knows of it, does it even matter? And this is a big challenge. If you have not come across the three the PI system of the three principles, what it actually takes to succeed from Harvey Coleman, I highly recommend you to look that up, because he identified that there are three components that are responsible for you being successful. And a tiny fraction, 7% comes down to your performance, meaning how good you are at what you do. Visibility is massive with over 60%. So I highly recommend you to look up the research PI concept. It will open your eyes. But in this training, what I'm going to share with you is 5 simple yet extremely effective systems that have helped me scale trust, but also over 400 of my clients to date, including Sophia. Sophia, I've known her for many, many years, and she is a high flyer, but she's always flown under the radar because she was exactly that kind of example. Did her MBA, worked on developing her skills, but didn't necessarily work on developing her presence. And she went through the Trusted Authority framework, and she said, I finally have the tools and the confidence, which is a big component, to go from subject expert to authority. She's also launched her own podcast. Make sure you check her out. She is landing speaking engagements left, right, and center. Plus, she's also now working on high profile projects within the organization simply by raising her own profile. Brian is another great example. Again, if you have not connected with him on LinkedIn just yet, make sure you do it. We've actually known each other when he was still in corporate. He actually engaged me as a keynote speaker when he was still at Xero, and we always stayed in touch. And then he reached out and said, I'm considering stepping into entrepreneurship. So we started working together, and he was able to generate more than his full-time income in year 1. And in a tech organization, that's quite a chunk. Let's just say that. He's also doubled his LinkedIn audience and built a strong personal brand. Plus, he's now building his team. And honestly, these kind of recommendations and introductions to another potential client are the best testimonials, because it proves that when you put the tools, the strategies, and the tactics into action, you get the result. And this is exactly the framework that I'm going to share with you. There are 3 big components that we need to focus on to build trust at scale. And this is so important because I always reference back to the digital and AI first world, which means that it's no longer who we know or the network that we are connected with. It's who knows of us that makes all the difference. So what it starts with is always your authority brand position, meaning what it actually is that you want to stand for and to be known for, trusted and recognized for. Once we have done the groundwork, we can build your signature framework, so we can ensure that what you promise will be delivered and you maintain trust and credibility throughout the process. Once we've done the groundwork, we then build your influence through content, through omnipresence, and also your leadership capabilities. And last but not least, to make everything sustainable, we need to put systems in place to maintain all of that. And this is where SOPs, standing operating procedures, come in, where assets come in, branding and marketing assets, processes and systems. And I know that may not sound very sexy, but in the end, this is exactly what helps you scale your influence and does the heavy lifting for you, even when you are not in a room and or sleeping, because people are awake 24/7. We are working with global teams these days. Now, let's move on. We want to know what is ahead for 2025, and here are the big trends. And we're going through all of them, but also how you can actually address them. So first, we need to be aware that it is literally the golden age of personal branding. I'll come to that in just a second. We also see a digital-first decision-making process. Content in this digital-first world and attention economy is a non-negotiable, and we also see a massive value shift from doing the work to winning the work. And last but not least, AI is here and it's here to stay. So we need to focus on an AI-driven leadership and collaborate with AI rather than reject it, and do it in our advantage so we can actually future-proof ourselves. Okay, so first things first, the number 1 trend is the golden age of personal brands. Why? It is literally your shortcut to influence. According to Edelman Trust Barometer, and I'm sure you've come across that research, we find out that leaders with strong personal brands attract more opportunities. Shouldn't come as a surprise. Also, LinkedIn found out that 70% of decision makers say thought leadership, meaning content that you publish, positively impacts trust. So I truly believe that the future of the economy, no matter the industry that you're in, but economy is founder-led, if you are the entrepreneur, and or leader-led. And leader does not necessarily mean that you've got the title of a leader in your organization, but it could mean leading your department, leading your influence. I work with a lot of head of partnerships, for example, and they don't necessarily have a massive team, but they are the face for their clients, which are partners, which means that when we focus on building their presence, their profile, the entire organization benefits from them. So if you are working in an organization and you say, well, I don't own it, so why should I care? You certainly should, because your decision maker is highly likely out there and they want to see, can we trust you? Are you reliable? Are you credible? Is my money, is my time, is my team in good hands with you? And we make our decisions way before we meet anyone else. When I did my own research, just to show you the variety, you will see that there's one example after the other across every industry and every profession. And I chose random examples. You can literally go and do this exercise yourself. But Kayla Itzenes, I'm not sure if you know, she is a fitness influencer in Australia. She literally lives in the same suburb that I live because I recently moved to the Gold Coast. Anyway, she's the founder of Sweat. Having said that, she actually sold Sweat, the app, and brought it back and stepped back into the personal brand role to build the business. Now she's got nearly 16 million followers, which is massive. Her app, it's just a fitness app in the end, has 1 million followers, which is not small either, but in contrast to nearly 16 million, it's tiny. Or take Richard Branson as another example. He's got nearly 5 million followers. Virgin, one of his brands, has 246,000 followers. Of course, who resonates with a company logo? Like, who's even behind that? Who's talking to me when I'm commenting on a post? I would never comment on a company's post. And last but not least, for the more creatives around us, Christo is one of my favorites. He's also a personal brand strategist. He's got 984,000 followers. His business, The Future, has half of that, 516,000. So again, this is what proves the point that the future of the economy is funnel-led, simply because we like to do business and any kind of commercial transactions, interactions, relationships with people we know, like, and you guessed it, we trust. Not corporate logos, and definitely not faceless businesses where we don't even know who is behind that. And this is supported by research. Again, this is Edelman Trust Barometer, and it shows that, especially over the last year, that's all recent research, the trust in certain people has increased. You can see in my CEO, so people working in organizations, they're trusting their own CEO more than ever before, but also CEOs in general. So if you are in a leadership position, this is certainly something that you need to consider. People are looking towards you. They are looking at you to talk about certain topics that impact them. They want to see, can we trust you? Do we want, as future employees, as partners, as clients, do we want to be aligned with you? Because we have done and have been able to do our own research in our own time, simply by seeing what kind of content do you put out there? What kind of person are you? What kind of value is important to you? And this is what brings me to system number one. So trend number one is all about personal branding is literally going to be in focus for the next year. That means that our first system, in order to establish that, is our authority brand system. What it comes down to are 3 steps. We firstly need to translate your credentials, meaning your capabilities in terms of your skills, the results that you can achieve, but also how you do it with your characteristics, your personality. Once we have defined your authority brand, then we bring that to life. And I put my own brand style guide in there because people think this is where we start. We put together a nice logo and all the colors and the fonts, and then we take photos. No, it doesn't start there. I always say branding is kind of the boring part. It is the unsexy part because you can't see anything immediately. You have to do a little bit of the deep work in order to understand what drives you, what are your natural strengths, what are your skills, and also who do you need to be complemented by and surrounded by in order for you to amplify your strength. Because if everyone has the same strengths, but also the same weaknesses, we are not building a high-performing team. So simply having this self-awareness helps you with this first step. And then once we know that, we can then bring that to life, because this is where your brand style comes in with the logos, the fonts, but also your commercial offers. So step number 3 in my 3C brand framework is commercialization, which means that we develop your signature framework that we can then commercialize. But I will come back to that in more depth because I truly believe this is what sets you apart in this. We've gone from the information age to now the relationship age. So step number 1 for you to focus on is to build your authority brand. Moving on, trend number 2 is a digital first decision-making process. And when you say, well, what does that even mean? Well, what it means is we have to rethink how we as a business, but also as an individual, offer our products, services, or our skill set. Because now, especially this year, for the first time, we're more baby boomers retiring, more millennials and Gen Zs stepping into decision-making roles. And as we know, if they haven't grown up already with technology, they have certainly adopted to it. And their way of making a decision, meaning how they gather information, how they assess different options, is completely different to a baby boomer. They want to have personalized information on platforms that they want to be on, in formats that resonates with them, and at a time that's convenient for them. So attending a lot of in-person, offline conferences or doing cold calls is over with this generation. So your online presence is not optional anymore. It is your storefront, because this is where the first interactions and usually the first experience happens. With that said, when we do start to Google you and we do want to find out what are you all about, are we even interested to connect further, there is often a trust gap. And I want you to play along, whether you are live here or you are watching the replay. I want you to assess yourself on 3 certain criteria that determine whether we trust somebody or not. So firstly, if somebody Googled you, would they trust you? Firstly, by assessing visibility, meaning are you there, credibility, and consistency. So let's quickly go through the 3 criteria. Firstly, visibility. When we Google your name, does your name or your brand appear in the top results to start with? Are there enough touch points? So when I click on one of the results, does it lead me to a website, for example? Does it lead me to a podcast where you were a guest on? Does it lead to an article that you wrote for an industry magazine? These are touch points. And of course, are those platforms current and professional looking? Or is it completely outdated? And if we were to meet in person, we wouldn't even recognize you because it's completely an outdated photo or a profile. So again, if you rate yourself from 1, I'm completely invisible, you cannot find me online, to 5, I'm dominating the search results and have an amazing first impression, this is where we start. The next criteria is credibility, meaning when we check you out, so let's say you are visible, you can be found online. Do you have consistent and professional branding across the different platforms? So when we go from one touch point to the next, there's not a complete gap in between that I thought, is this person the same? Because they're talking about different things, they look different, because that breaks trust and breaches trust quicker than we can say trust. Then also, as I said, we're now moving away from the information age to the relationship age, because we can Google or ChatGPT literally everything. Do you show your expertise through your own frameworks or evidence of results, case studies, the before and after, behind the scenes? And of course, is your authority supported by the content that you put out there? Or is it mainly puppy memes and kids get hurt videos? Don't you worry, I love those too, but I'm not going to share that because it's not aligned with my brand, and I definitely don't want to be known for that. Last but not least, to assess if you've got a trust gap when somebody Googles you or not, is consistency, meaning how active are you across the different platforms? And also, do people have the opportunity to get to know you? When they see a post on LinkedIn, for example, they can go into their own rabbit hole to see, are we the right fit? Can we trust you? Do we want to work together? Or is it over and out? We cannot, after the first post that maybe really resonated with us on LinkedIn, we cannot find anything else. This is consistency. In the end, we need to build this ecosystem where people can do their own research in their own time and across different formats and platforms that work for them. And this is where system number 2 comes in. We need to build this, what we call scalable trust ecosystem, that creates this very consistent and cohesive online plus also offline experience. Because in the end, most interactions, if not all these days, happen online first. So we want to see photos of you in different setups. For example, I've got a new office, so I've done a lot of behind the scenes photos and time lapses, simply for people to become part of my journey. They feel that they can see what I'm doing. They can see how I would work. They can see how it would be for them, their experience when they work with me. I also show and share a lot of carousels and tutorials, which is more in depth. And it's also increasing what we call on LinkedIn the dwell time, meaning how long do people stay on the platform, in particular on your post, because that gets pushed out to a wider audience. So if you want to increase your reach, carousels, meaning the slideshow where you've got multiple slides, is the way to go. And of course, also infographics to build your credibility and also to communicate your IP. It's great to know what you know, but it's better to be able to communicate what you know. And this is exactly the difference between an expert and an authority that I found out in my research. An expert knows a lot. They know literally every single detail. However, an authority knows a lot, plus is able to communicate what you know in a way that resonates with their decision makers. And this is where different communication comes in, from turning your expertise, your technical knowledge into carousels, meaning easy to digest sound bites of what you know, turning that into an infographic, turning that into a portfolio. Also, have you got online assets that do the heavy lifting for you 24/7? So if somebody comes onto your website, for example, or your portfolio, can we get to know you? Can we see a video? Can we see your thought leadership because you've contributed content? Also, when there is an opportunity for you to speak at an event, have you got your pitch deck or your media kit or your speaker kit ready to go? If somebody would refer you, is that consistent with what they find online? Because in the end, there's nothing worse when we have got a certain expectation of somebody and then we meet them and it's like, doo-doo. Who is this person? Like, I did not expect that at all. So this is where system number 2 comes in, simply because the decision-making process is changing due to the generational changes. We have to adopt and adapt to those changes by building a scalable trust ecosystem. And this is how it looks in the real world and application. Now, I chose my own example simply to protect the privacy of my clients. But if you were to come onto my LinkedIn profile, for example, you will see same look and feel, same tone and voice, same message across all my channels. It's the same headline, it's the same banner, it's the same experience. When somebody Googles me, I also make sure that I firstly own my name. And there is another Petra Sink. If you're Nicole, I would love to meet you, but she is in Germany and she's a yoga instructor and she was quite active. So my name did not come up anywhere. So I went hardcore on contributing also content on third-party platforms, because that also increases and improves your own search results. So yes, your own platforms are important because you are in control over that. But in order to expand to a new or wider audience, you also need to tap into other people's platforms through content contribution in industry magazines, for example, or being a guest on podcasts. Plus, is there an opportunity for people to take this next step? So I mentioned at the beginning that I also have a quiz, an assessment, a scorecard where you can see where you are right now in your authority and influence building journey. Based on the results, you then get personalized recommendations, what you can do to improve your results slightly or exponentially, depending on how much time, resources, and effort you actually want to put in there. But if you come onto my website and you get into this next step, same look and feel, same tone and voice, same message, same promise. And this is very important. But it doesn't stop there. Like, it would be great. And most people actually, or most courses, programs, experts, they all stop there. They say, build an incredible LinkedIn profile and, that's it. No, it doesn't. Actually, it starts there because trust is built over time. And this leads me into trend number 3. Like it or not, most of us don't like it, but we do live in an attention economy. And content is what drives visibility and trust. If you have not come across the 7-11-4 rule by Google, I would highly recommend you to check that out, because they've done a lot of research, because they've got access to the data, what it actually takes for a consumer to make a purchase decision. And they've identified, on average, it takes somebody 7 hours of content consumption across 11 separate interactions and touch points and 4 different locations, which means we want them to be able to get into this rabbit hole and get to know us even better. 7 hours of content. You think that's a lot? And it is, but at the same time, it isn't. When you do have a combination of short form and long form content. For example, most of my podcast episodes are between 15 and 35, 40 minutes. So if we binge listen to 5 of them, we've covered already a big chunk. Then simply Going through the carousels, that takes probably another 2-3 minutes, and consuming the content there. Having a conversation, word out of mouth, this is another interaction and touch point, is another opportunity to build your own reputation and awareness. And then 4 different locations. I'm sure you've been in the same situation where you've come across an amazing post of somebody, and then you started Googling them. And then you listened to a podcast. Then you saw that they've got a YouTube channel. Then you saw them speaking at a conference. And this is what's meant with 4 different locations and different touch points. In the end, depending on where we are in the decision-making process, we need access to different information. If I'm not even solution aware that I want to educate myself further, I couldn't be bothered with a special offer from an online provider because I'm not even in the mindset of wanting to learn. And this is why building content is the answer. Because in the end, if you think about it, people want to hear from people what they think. And the best way in this digital first world, how we do it, is through creating content. And what I mentioned before, trust in certain people has gone up. In particular, CEOs and employees, partners, contractors, even consultants say, I expect CEOs to manage change occurring in society, not just occurring in their own business. So they want to hear from other CEOs, what are the job skills for the future? Because CEOs usually have their finger on the pulse and see what works in a business and what doesn't. How do you use technology? Because in the end, every decision that's made from the top impacts the bottom. If a company is not following ethical frameworks, for example, and gets sued eventually, it has a negative impact on employees. Because as much as the halo effect can work in your favor, especially when building credibility and stepping into somebody else's credibility shadow and can kind of piggyback off them, it also works, unfortunately, the other way around, that we can be seen or our reputation can be dragged down when somebody else who is connected to us makes the wrong decision. And also automation impact on jobs. People want to know how decisions are made and how organizations and CEOs in particular respond to the changes. Are they safe? There's a saying, nobody cares about you until you care about them. So the more you can talk about what's in it for others, share your insights, share your experience, share your own learnings, the more you build trust with current and of course also future employees, partners, and clients. And this is exactly where content comes in. This is the new way of communicating because of course, being in person, speaking with each other is the quickest way to build trust because we can see each other's body language. We can hear the tone and voice. We can see and feel the vibe between us. The next big thing in this digital first world is content creation. It helps us to go from I don't know you, I don't trust you, to actually I do like you, I do know you, and I trust you also. And this is where system number 3 comes in, what we call the authority content. Now, building your authority content ecosystem is exactly this combination of short form posts, meaning when you go on LinkedIn, it's a short form post. There's only so much you can put into a post until you run out of characters. But you don't want to stop there. You do that at the beginning to build brand awareness. But when you are in people's mind, they want to know, okay, so I get you. I do like where you're going. I resonate with your thoughts, but I want to dig a little bit deeper and learn more from and about you before I make any decisions. And this is where long form comes in. It could be through posts, like blog posts. It could be podcasts. It could be YouTube videos, whatever your strongest suit is when it comes to communication, we need to start there. But it's building this ecosystem from going from one platform to the next, from going to short form to long form, to going from free to fee. And last but not least, what I also mentioned before, to increase your own credibility, your own reach, we need to collaborate with others. Me as a person, me as a business, I only have so much reach. However, every person, let's say I've got 500 connections. Most of us on LinkedIn have 500 connections at least. If I work with 5 other business owners who've also got 500 connections, I 5 times my reach that I could have as an individual. And this is also what so many companies underestimate. They don't tap into the power of leveraging their employees as a brand ambassador. Sharing content from your personal profile exponentially increases reach and trust than through a company page. I actually made the decision from 2025 onwards to not post anything on my company pages on LinkedIn anymore. Waste of time. There, I said it. You can challenge me on that. I'm happy. But this is my decision because I see nobody resonates with companies. I don't resonate with companies. So why would I even consider doing that further? So this is system number 3, authority content, and creating this ecosystem. Again, my own example, simply to not share too many details from my clients, but we do exactly that with our clients. For example, we've got a media kit here for a certain audience, but it's a digital asset that works 24/7. We have long form and short form posts here. When you have a look at that, it's all very much an ecosystem for different audiences, for different purposes. But if you've got this arsenal of those brand and marketing assets developed, they can work for you 24/7. And this is also required for building a system, because if you don't have assets to use, the system, how to use it, is irrelevant because you don't need it. Let's say you want one of your goals, maybe to do more public speaking in 2025. If that's the case, high five to that. I 100% support it because it does elevate your authority brand very quickly. However, how do you get speaking engagements? Yep. You need to have a speaker kit where you've mapped out your signature keynotes, where you've mapped out a short summary about your keynote, where you've got learnings that your participants will walk away with. Because event organizers, they want a shortcut. So they don't want to do the heavy lifting and research and write everything on their own. They want to copy and paste. So having a speaker kit means that you can focus, or a virtual assistant or any kind of assistant can help you with that. You can focus on doing the research. Where do I actually want to speak? Where are opportunities? And then send the media kit one after the other with templated outreach messages already, which is also part of our system. And this is how you can scale your influence. I'm not saying that just because it's a buzzword. There is a system to the madness how you do it. But if you always come up with anything on the go, can you send me your about me? Sure. Can you send me a profile photo? Sure. Can you send me a short outline of the talk that you're giving? Sure. This is what costs you time and with that money. And I'm all for working smarter rather than harder. However, with that said, content is not just marketing. It certainly helps your marketing efforts, but especially for the more technical, especially the financial professionals amongst us, you will appreciate that. Content is an asset that compounds over time when you leverage it the right way. It doesn't go anywhere. We're building our digital footprint, which means a post from 3 years ago, and you can literally go onto my LinkedIn profile and check that out. I've got it in my featured section. A post from, actually, it's 2 years ago, but it's still a long time ago. It's not 24 hours like on most other platforms when the post dies. Still gets me leads, still gets me bookings on my calendar, because I've put the link to my Calendly into this post, and it has over 730 likes and I don't know how many comments. And this is what content does. It's an asset. It's not waste of time. It's certainly not just for influencers. It is for thought leaders and leaders across every category. Okay, we are nearly there. We do have another couple of trends that we have to cover, because now we have established our authority brand as number 1. We have developed our scalable trust ecosystem by bringing our brand to life online and offline, developing assets, driving interest, meaning traffic and people, through content to those pages that are optimized, but it doesn't stop there. And this trend is a big one. Maybe you've experienced it for yourself already. If not, trust me, you will do it this year. Value is shifting from doing the work to winning the work. So what does that mean? We see already, doesn't matter what industry or profession you're in, left, right, and center, that tasks are getting outsourced to cheaper countries and or automate it, because there is a certain way how you get to the result. So instead of paying somebody a high wage, companies who are under more commercial pressure outsourcing that or automating that. Which means that even if you are the best at what you do, it may not be relevant in this fast-paced world that we live in. What does set you apart is, instead of doing the work, how you win the work for the business. Plus, we also see that clients want direct access to the decision makers. We see, and maybe you've experienced it for yourself, especially if you are in professional services, we see that the marketing function becomes a supporter role rather than a driver role. Meaning, so many network events, like even in a few that I'm in, they're not allowing any marketing team to be joining that particular network, because it's a network of business owners. And we want to do business directly with the decision makers. We don't want to jump through different loops in order to speak with the right person. We want to get straight to the source and not waste time, which means that especially if you're stepping into a partnership role and or a senior executive role, your job in particular, your value is associated with how much work you bring in, how much of your relationship building skills can you provide to build a network of partners, clients, future employees. So winning the work is now all about scaling trust across not only your own team, but also your departments and markets. Because when we see that marketing managers, especially with professional services, become more a supporter, they still have conversations. They still can become brand ambassadors. But in order for them and for the entire team to have common language, we need to have one thing in place. In the end, it comes down to expanding your trust through assets that can be replicated, that can form the foundation for having common understanding of what we do, but also how we do it. Creating unique language, but also having systems, frameworks, assets, and procedures in place help you exactly to stand out. And these are just a few that I've developed over time. In fact, the post that I mentioned before, this is an asset that got a lot of engagement. Check that out because it's still on there. I want to keep that there to prove that when you do it right, it totally works in your favor. It's not a waste of time and it's not for influencers only. And this brings me into the system number 4 that we need to focus on for this year, especially if you are in a knowledge or professional service-based industry. You need to focus on building a leveraged authority growth system. What does that mean? It means that you need to focus on developing a signature framework that you, your team, your business is becoming known and trusted for, which means your IP, everything that you know, everything that you do needs to be systemized and packaged, because with this package, you can then turn that and support it through repeatable systems. So all of a sudden, the frameworks become the common language that align teams, because everyone uses the same wording, the same explanations, the same similes, metaphors, analogies. Plus, when they do talk to potential clients, they fast track trust and also value, because you've had a conversation once. You're not starting from scratch when you talk to somebody else. And this is exactly what also helps you to build different commercial models around that framework. This is also what I cover in the Trusted Authority program. How can you build this commercial flywheel based on the one and only signature framework? We're not recreating anything from scratch every single time we're getting asked to do certain consulting work or contributing to a project. We always come back to our framework. Excuse me. Please, if you've got any questions, put it in the Q&A box. I'm more than happy to answer and have a quick breather, because as you see and hear, I'm very passionate about branding, trends, and how we can actually future-proof ourselves. Okay. So system number 4, we are nearly there. In fact, we actually implemented exactly that system for Jen. Jen and I have been working together for quite some time. We started working together when she transitioned to go from being an independent and individual contributor in the organization in a senior role to becoming the partner. And as we know, in a partner role, your job is to do business development. So her value shifted from doing the work and being one of the best in her field to actually bringing business in to keep the team and the business afloat and alive. What we did with her is implemented tried, tested, and well-known systems and marketing approaches from other industries in her own industry, because it's very specialized, it's very niche, but at the same time, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about using what's already there, using what already works, just in a different context and contextualized to the resources, the people, the language that's there. So if you say, oh, that doesn't apply to me, I honestly would challenge you every single time, because it doesn't matter if that exact system, framework, idea applies to you, the overarching idea does. So how can you contextualize that? And this is a senior executive skill that you can use one inside idea and learning and apply it in a different context. Now, with Jen, honestly, she is an incredible role model, and I would highly recommend you to also connect with her. She has landed podcast interviews. She has set up her own roadshow that she is doing now regionally and set up her own network of decision makers. In certain industries, offline is a great way to establish your industry authority and influence, but it actually, again, is contextual. So simply applying one best practice into another usually doesn't work. And this is where contextual thinking and approach comes in. Last but not least, we are on the home stretch. Trend number 5 is AI. Yes, the big AI word, we have to mention it because, again, we're not going backwards anymore, and we need to learn how to lead in this AI-driven world, but also collaborate with it rather than resent it. We just mentioned people want to have direct access to decision makers. So 70% of buying decisions are made before speaking to a rep. They want to consume content in their own time, on their own platforms, and in formats that resonates with them. We've also just seen that the 7-11-4 rule is very prevalent, and organizations who don't have a content strategy certainly need to get the gear together. Plus, we've got access to AI. So instead of worrying about our jobs being replaced, why not leverage the systems and the tech that's available to allow us to create a more human-centered and a human-first experience by responding to inquiries quickly? In fact, speed is one of the most underrated competitive advantages there is. And still, how many organizations do not call back, do not respond, just ignore your messages, even though you are a potential customer or client or employee? And honestly, that is shocking. There's only so many more months or maybe even years that a company can get away with that. So what does it mean? Trust can and should be scaled, but done in the right way. So it's not about just implementing all the chatbots that you can find and completely automating and outsourcing everything. It's about doing it in the right way. It's about designing a very clear and compelling path to go from free, meaning consuming content in different formats, in different lengths, to fee, where I'm actually inclined to give you money for learning more, to getting more personalized support, to be part of a network. Because once we know that, this is what we call in the business world the customer journey. Once we've mapped that out, we then need to deliver and develop a supporting assets. May it be a training like that, may it be our media kit, may it be a free quiz or assessment, anything that helps us to turn potentially interested clients, employees, partners into actual commercial opportunities for us. And this is how we can monetize and scale, by implementing tools, teams, when we outsource or when we expand the team, and or technology. Okay, I know. Take a deep breath because I know it was a lot. So let's quickly recap. We talked about the 5 trends being, it's all about personal branding, digital first decision making, attention economy where content is king, value shifting from doing the work to winning the work, and last but not least, AI-driven leadership and collaboration with AI is a non-negotiable if you want to future-proof yourself and actually thrive in economy 4.0. How do we address those trends? Firstly, it's about building an authority brand, meaning we clarify what your position is, define what's your unique competitive advantage in the market, and then we bring that to life through brand style guides and any supporting assets. So system number one is where authority brand hub comes in. Once we have done the groundwork and built the foundation, we build upon that. It's not an and or, it's first step, second step. Think of it like building a house. You are not putting the roof on before you have built the foundation. So step number two, once we've defined your authority brand, is to develop and or optimize a consistent online and offline presence where we see the same look and feel, tone and voice, message and assets. And this is where system number two comes in, which is the scalable trust ecosystem that does work for you 24/7 and allows people to get to know you when they are actually coming onto your profile because you came up in a conversation or they simply found you. Now, the chances that they just simply find you are quite slim, let's be honest. But this is where system number three comes in. We need to drive interest. We need to drive traffic. We need to provide an opportunity for people to actually get into the rabbit hole, get to know us a little bit further. And this is where content comes in. As you can see, these are all different content formats, and it's not by accident. It's very intentional. I actually only recently introduced a handwritten note. Honestly, one of the best content assets there is. I actually show you the little book. I've got it right here. What it allows us is to create content that is not copyable, because in the end, let's see, there's a few ideas that I want to do. You know, this is exactly that. Having the hand in there, for example, having the pens there is what creates unique, personal, and not Googleable content based on your authority and leadership. And this is actually how you cut through the noise. Everyone can copy and paste random content from ChatGPT. And honestly, if you're still putting the content in there with a capital letter at the beginning, I see you. I see what you're doing. Do not do that. Anyway, this is where system number three comes in, authority content. And it doesn't stop there. In order for you to differentiate yourself and also to scale trust beyond you, meaning through your team, that they can do the heavy lifting for you, through your department, but also beyond your organization in the industry, you need to have a signature framework that has your systemized and packaged IP that we bring then to life through a visual like this one, for example, because this is exactly what you own and nobody can take that away. It helps when you trademark things, but it doesn't protect everything either. So this is system number four, a leveraged authority growth system. And last but not least, in order for you to turn people who follow you, even connections on LinkedIn, into actual commercial opportunities, we need to build a solid system to go from free, I see you, I hear you, I resonate with you, I like you, I even start to trust you, to become somebody who invests either their time, if they're an employee, or their money, if they are a client, in you and what you have to offer. And this is where we then leverage technology, tools, and also teams, where we can build a system to scale trust. So as you hear and see, it's not a gimmick, it's not a buzzword, there's an actual framework how we can do that. And I'm sure you are quite inspired now, and I love it. And if you say, you know, I can do this, I'm sure you can. But at the same time, it's only the tip of the iceberg. My book is 368 pages. Big. It's quite a Bible, let's just put it that way. Because in the end, knowing is one thing, and I see and met so many professionals who are consuming content, literally 24/7. And I love it because I'm a learner too, I'm doing the same. But if you only consume content and you're not doing anything with the content, you become a walking and talking library. Doesn't get the results. And I've done it for many, many years too. In fact, developing this system took me 4 years and many, many failed attempts. If you say, you know what, we, as me in my own business, me as a professional, me within a wider team, we do have specialized expertise, especially for this economy that we are entering. And we do want to be known and trusted for our contribution. But I couldn't be bothered wasting my time figuring out everything by myself, putting together all the pieces that I can find through Google searches and YouTube research. Then you are in for a treat. As I said at the beginning, I will share how we can actually work together in 2025 because I'm honestly so freaking excited that I can say that the Trusted Authority is back, bigger and better than ever before as a 2.0 version. Because if you have been in my ecosystem for a while, firstly, thank you. I honestly appreciate you so much. You will see that the framework has evolved over time. I ran the first cohort in 2021, so a little while ago, and it was one ecosystem of content, and it was quite packed, and people were inspired, got a lot out of it, but at the same time, a little bit overwhelmed. So I've split all of the content into proper hubs. We're starting in the Authority Brand Hub to define your authority position. See what makes you unique and valuable for people to invest in you, whether it's a business, whether it's you as an executive, whether it's you as a speaker. This is where the foundation starts. Then we turn your IP, what you know and what you already do, into your own signature framework that you can use in interviews, that you can use to build your business on that. This is where it all starts and also stops, because if you don't go through that process, everything else does not really matter. But it doesn't stop there. As we said before, content is king in this attention economy. So we need to know, how do we actually build content or create content that builds authority, influence, plus, and that's a big one, likability. There I said it. Likability is one of the factors that make or break your success. If I don't like you, you can be the best at what you do. Doesn't matter. I don't want to hang out with you. So creating personal connection through storytelling, through handwritten notes, through behind the scenes. This is exactly what cuts through the noise, and it's not just a copy and paste caption with a stock image. We are in 2025. Leave all of the good old tried, tested content approaches in the past. We are in 2025, mainly for LinkedIn. Now, I know a lot of you are busy and are not natural content creators. You know, being an influencer is a profession nowadays, but it's also quite intense if you want to do it professionally. And I don't expect that. If you are in business and or work with businesses, your audience is on LinkedIn. Plus, write that down, LinkedIn is a search engine. So as a recruiter with my recruitment company, what we're still doing to the day, we always go straight when we see a resume, a name, straight onto LinkedIn and see what we can find. Now, guess what? If we can't find anything on LinkedIn, the journey ends right there. Because I don't know, are you even real? Are you credible? Is your skill set still up to date when I can't even find you online? And you know, I can tell you from experience, I recruit a lot of senior leaders and executives. Boards and chairs are looking for the credibility and, big one, community. Does this leader who comes into the organization already have influence over a certain audience? Maybe future employees, maybe other industry leaders, maybe potential partners. This is exactly what decisions are based upon. Do you have content to build your credibility, to let us get to know you, and a community that we can tap into for one or another reason? And this is why LinkedIn is a non-negotiable. It is a search engine, plus it also improves and increases your credibility and your reach on on Google. So if somebody Googles you, you do the test yourself. You will see that the first 3 results, or within the first 3 results, your LinkedIn profile will come up, whether you've optimized it or not, because it has a high level of trust in Google and high credibility, which means that simply optimizing your LinkedIn profile is key. And last but not least, this is where we then tap into technology, automation, and all the fun tools, but we're not starting there, to build trust at scale. So this is how it looks. As I said, 4 very, very comprehensive hubs that are a combination of self-paced content. You can see everything is available on mobile because we are all busy and usually on the go. Plus, speaking of on the go, you've got access to a private podcast. So you don't have to sit and look at 100 videos and waste time. You actually can walk, you can go for your gym session, you can go shopping, and you can listen and learn at the same time. You do have a few videos just to explain some concepts in more depth, and some people are more visual learners, and that's great. Now, there are two options. I always say choose your own adventure. You will see I've made it extremely accessible because I truly believe you need to do something different compared to every other year if you want to stay not only relevant, but actually thrive in this next economy. For those who say, I'm happy to do a self-guided tour and I can learn in my own terms, you literally get all those 4 hubs for 495 Australian dollars. We're not even talking about US dollars. So let that just sink in. It's just a little bit over $100 per hub. If you say, you know what, great, but I do want some personalized support, I've got an option for you too. Every single chapter has strategy 1-pagers. If you don't know me yet, you will know me now. I love 1-pagers, everything, which means that every single chapter has a 1-page strategy. So from your commercial roadmap to your content strategy, to your brand strategy, to your network strategy, to your product development strategy, we've got a strategy 1-pager for that. And you simply submit that online and you get personalized feedback via video within 24 hours. Plus, we also have a strategy session where we map out how we can implement all of the knowledge, the information that you've got access to for your own situation and context. And this is 1,495, again, Australian dollars. Especially if you're in the US, you are welcome because Australian dollars are literally worth nothing at the moment. So you get it certainly for a bargain. But even for our Australian friends here, howdy. Amazing value. So if you are interested, then I would highly recommend you to check out the link, which I will also put in the chat in just a second. It is very easy to find. There we go. Okay. And please, if we've got any questions, drop that in. There's the chat. Always takes me a while to find. There we go. Okay, you can check that out. As I said, we're going through a lot in the program simply because it's a different kind of information that you don't get anywhere else. And especially if you say, I really have something to offer because I've got knowledge about AI, I've got knowledge about ESG, I've got knowledge that people can actually benefit from, then I highly encourage you to check it out and consider it. Having said that, I don't want you to stop there. This is literally the start. I want you to take action right away. If you have not done the quiz just yet, go back to that. Get started to assess where your authority and influence stands right now. And also get those personalized recommendations, what you can do to increase your credibility, to increase your visibility, whatever it may be. You can find that under impact with the CCC.com//quiz. This is going to be a hard one for me to say, but you can also listen to podcasts. We've got over 170 episodes and releasing that every single week. Plus, you also have the book as a more in-depth reference. It's actually designed like a workbook, so you can turn all of the ideas, insights into action straight away. So with that said, we are 8 minutes over. If there are any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. I'm more than happy to hang around, answer any questions, have a conversation about anything that you're interested in. If you're watching that on replay, good on you for making it all the way through. Let's jam on LinkedIn. Send me a message if we are not connected yet. What are you waiting for? Let's connect. And of course, also on Instagram, I'm a little bit active on there again-ish, but I'm always happy to chat in the direct messages or obviously send me an email. So with that said, I'm very mindful of your time. I really, really appreciate you joining, investing in your own development, and I want to see one action implemented in the next 30 days. Not in the next year, not in the next quarter, in the next 30 days. Maybe updating your LinkedIn profile, expanding your network, booking a call with me to see how we can implement that for you and or your team. Take one action. With that said, I will leave you be. Thank you for joining. Have a beautiful Friday. And of course, a lovely, relaxing weekend ahead. And let's make 2025 the best and most amazing year yet.